Thanks for staying with us. Today on the show, we'll be discussing real-life examples, pervasive silence and stigma associated with in vitro fertilization, popularly known as IVF in our society. Joining us to dissect this issue is a seasoned communication professional with over 15 years of working with the United Nations and international organizations on sexual reproductive health and rights. Welcome to the show, Adeola Olunloyo.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning, ladies.
And then you can join the conversation by calling us on the numbers on your screen, 020-1635. It'll be right there on the screen. Or you can call us on the second number, tweet to us. We'd love to hear from you. So now this, I was supposed to do my banter on what I had posted online about raising funds for IVF.
I saw that, really
and
wonderful.
I felt we didn't have the time so that we'll still get to discuss the matter today because it is a really pressing issue.
Yeah.
When I read the comment, right now I am overwhelmed.
Yeah.
We got people sharing their entire life story. I did not think it was like, I just wanted to just put indication they will send you DM. But people were now commenting their entire life, the challenges they faced with IVF.
People are dying in silence.
So the stigma is real.
It is.
What are the common stigmas that has been associated with IVF that you want us to address? You'd like us to address on the show today?
For stigma around IVF, you know, we are living in a society where everyone thinks that to be a virtuous woman, you have to conceive naturally. So anything that goes against the norm of the natural progression of getting pregnant naturally is frowned upon. And then there's a lot of misinformation about IVF anyway. So people, it's like a mystery. We need to demystify IVF because people think it's ungodly. And people probably also question whether or not the babies will come out right. And that whether or not they're being manufactured in the lab. You know, so demystifying IVF in terms of educating people about what the process is, it's still natural. And I tell people, even though it's assisted reproductive technology, the
Conception.
Conception, yeah. I mean, conception and the finalization is still in the hands of God because the doctors get to a certain point where they can't do anything. They leave the egg and the sperm to fertilize. So it depends on God or nature or the universe to decide whether or not it's going to become a baby. So, yeah, we always need to remind people that science, even the assisted reproductive technology like IVF, it still needs God's approval for it to transit to having a baby successfully.
Even apart from the God's approval, you know, it's not everybody that it works for. Some people do it and it's expensive and they never are able to conceive.
Absolutely.
You know?
But there's no guarantee. However, there is reassurance when people try. Let's not forget that IVF has made it possible for 12 million babies to be born globally. That's huge. That's 12 million families, you know, that are happy and that have successfully become parents because they got that assistance. So I would say trying in itself is a fulfillment for women who need to consider it, and even men.
I mean, I remember offering to pay for someone to have IVF, and I never heard from her. Then I asked her, I said, look, I don't mind. You are someone that you are my person. She said her husband did not agree.
So let's go into the stigma.
Family. Stigma and mindset. Now, for men are also suffering more in silence because their masculinity is associated with whether they can impregnate a woman or not. And we need to pay attention to men, honestly, because our society is very vicious. Anytime there's no pregnancy or we feel that the problem is from the men, it questions their masculinity and their manhood, you know, but we need to let them understand that it's just a medical issue. It doesn't mean that you are not a man or less of a man if you're not able to.
I have a personal experience of a family, a close family friend whose husband's family are averse to IVF.
Yeah.
And so we had gathered around our sister to help her with the IVF, and we raised funds. We expected that as a young couple they would have some savings that they would, and the man said, no, my family is averse to it. The patriarch in my family is averse to it. They do not believe it. They think it's so expensive for a trial. And fast forward, we are looking at the situation because it's not like our friend is infertile, our sister is infertile. She gets pregnant, but the babies do not make it past. So you know that you need some form of assistance.
And it could be surrogacy for them.
For them, it could be.
Exactly.
It could also be because I had gone through this process as well.
Yeah.
It could also be that with a bit of assistance, you give the zygote, or what is it called?
Yeah, the embryo.
Some form of strength to withstand whatever process is dispelling that baby. This family in question thought, they just do 4 wives. Another wife. This young couple, they got another wife. And she too, very fertile lady, but she too started going through the same.
Which shows that the man needs to be investigated and supported. So we need to talk more
about this. This is something I don't have the permission to share, but I was forced to share. Because a lot of people do not know that they need that help. We had to start to say to our friend, you need to be on a lot of these multivitamin supplements and all of that. Because you're walking this journey alone, as it is now. With a man who has options, you're walking alone. And I know how difficult it is to go through that situation alone. I didn't have to walk it alone, and that's the blessing I had. Walking it alone, and how important, please, let's talk about how important it is for men to also be checking.
Absolutely. Research is showing now that, they contribute. The health of a man also contributes, yes, to the success of a pregnancy. But because the focus is always on the woman takes the blame. The one thing I want to quickly also highlight is the mental health support of it. Many of us go into this blindly. Many people need counseling, right? To even adjust or accept and understand what they're going through. We always pray about it, or we always just make it like a communal thing. But honestly, it's a lot to handle mentally. And for a man, for instance, if a man has no sperm and is being offered to use a donor sperm with his wife's egg, it's a lot. Some of them can't handle it.
And women have immunity.
Exactly. Yes, so that's why I said, even before you go into that process, you should have like pre-treatment counseling, and then during the treatment, and then even after. Because every step of the way, you need that mental health support to be able to cope.
I would want to come from the angle to say that you have spoken about how men can also help each other. But I know that a lot of men still live in denial, especially when they have, or maybe they've not been diagnosed, or they have traces of low sperm count and very weak ejaculation and all of that. But now it brings me back to, I always say this, excuse me, but a lot of people have given birth to more children that they don't need. And deprive the people that need the children of it.
The imbalance of life.
The imbalance of life. I was in the market yesterday, I saw a woman with quadruplets, 4 girls. Obviously, she doesn't need them. And in my head, I'm like,
how do you know she doesn't need them?
She was actually begging to feed them. No. So in my head, I'm like, this God safe. If we can see you to just be asking you questions, why you do these things. But now I'll take it back to the family unit.
Yes.
And especially our kind of structural belief, traditional belief. If you're not doing it, even cesarean session, we have just got to go.
Shame women for everything.
Oh, she's not an Hebrew woman. Oh, you're not.
Yes.
So how do we now keep encouraging ourselves? Is it a plan that individuals have to really come together and enforce and make people understand that, see, even personally, I believe that having a child is not compulsory. But if you really desire it, don't downcast the person who desires to go through other methods to have their baby because you have had it naturally 5 times, 6 times, 9 times, and you feel that it's okay.
Honestly, we need access to comprehensive fertility education. Because comprehensive, I said, because we have a lot of inadequate information and misinformation flying around. All of us as a family or as a society has a role to play in understanding that everyone has their unique pathway to parenthood. And like you said, some don't even want to have kids, right?
Yes.
And then some want to delay having kids to have it later, So we all must respect that based on everyone's trajectory or everyone's values or everyone's principles or everyone's status, because some also don't have money, right? And if they don't have money, don't shame them to say, oh, you know how and that's why we're having situations where you have children that cannot be cared for. So anything around fertility is very sensitive. It's very personal and it's complicated because you also don't know the underlying medical conditions that people are facing. Yeah, but everyone needs adequate information to be able to make timely and informed decisions. So my personal experience was I waited too long, right? I went through 3 IVF cycles, but I started at 42. And I didn't know. It was when my doctor said, you want to do what at 42? You are too late. I'm like, what do you mean I'm too late? And that's when I started my journey. I'm like, I didn't know so many things, even though I was in sexual and reproductive health sector, talking about reproduction, talking about pregnancy prevention, but I really didn't understand the fragility of time when it comes to a woman's biological clock. And that's why I'm ringing the bell and the alarm for women now, because we are living in a modern world where marriage and motherhood is being delayed. Women have access to more now. We're pursuing careers and our dreams. We want to become economically empowered, but no one is telling women, hey, you can pursue all of those things.
Give us the data.
Yeah.
Because I know that I've volunteered actively with Quiverful, which is for the past 5 years.
Yes.
And because of that, I'm exposed to a lot of the numbers of how sharp the decline happens above 40 for women to get pregnant.
I know that.
Even with IVF.
Yes. So age-related fertility decline is important to know that a woman is most fertile in her 20s. By the time you are 30, your fertility starts to decline. And then by the time you clock 35, it significantly starts to drop. So that by the time you get to 40, you have only 5% chance, which was my case, you know. And then the quality and the quantity of the egg starts to decline. It does not mean that miracles doesn't happen. But we keep telling people miracles are uncommon. They are 1 in a million. So if everybody gets into the group of we're waiting on the Lord, and you don't take action to find out what's happening, know your fertility, know your fertility status, know what the problem is, and then address it, because there are different pathways to parenthood, and one will always work for you.
I'd like you to help us talk about because one of the things we wanted you to help us address is the stigma and getting people more open to it.
Yes.
From your own personal experience, how did you have to deal with a bit of stigma with your partner, or you were both very enlightened? How did you relate with family and friends when they got to know you were trying to do IVF? That are you not trusting God? Don't you have faith that God will do it for you? All those conversations, how was it, and how do you now help people to embrace having those conversations? Okay,
so in my case, I am single. So I attempted motherhood as a single mother by choice. Because I realized, because I had been waiting for Mr. Right and he didn't show up, my biological clock had passed, right? So this is one message I'm also passing to women, because we now have a growing population of women like me. They are waiting, but their biological clock is not waiting.
And Mr. Right is running.
Exactly. So how do we open up the conversations? Because even single motherhood is stigmatized. I am empowered. I have a voice, so I didn't feel there was any need for me to explain myself to anybody to take my part. But I know a lot of women can't do what I'm doing, right? So in my case also, I couldn't even tell my mother, because I knew that she couldn't handle it. So I only had a few trusted friends and my medical team that worked with me. And I can tell you, it was the most emotionally distressing experience I've ever had in my life.
That's huge.
So when we talk about stigma, people, it's deep. And it's about reassessing how we relate to people who are not like us, or relate to people who are dealing with infertility, or relating even to people who are single. And you're looking at them like, what are you waiting for? Don't ask people, what are you waiting for? You don't know what they've been through. You don't know how many failed relationships they've had. You don't know whether they are dealing. Exactly. You don't know if they have fibroids or they are dealing with. In my case, I had 2 diagnoses, fibroids and adenomyosis. I had never heard about adenomyosis before in my life. So they were telling me the solution is hysterectomy. So because I wanted to do a hysterectomy was what forced me to say, okay, let me try and have a child before. So I wouldn't even have bothered. So again, the lesson I took out from it, which I need to share with women, is don't wait for crisis to happen. You have to be proactive. Even before you are ready to have children, know your fertility status. Because I was just living and cruising until I was forced to face that situation and deal with it. Exactly.
We'll take a break, and that's what I love about the show, because we are opening people's eyes to bringing to their consciousness the reality that people choose to ignore, but they would face at the end of the day. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.